You know, in the absolute darkest days of the Great Depression, when entire industries were just collapsing and millions were out of work, one man made a bet. A bet so huge, so audacious, it could either save his iconic company or burn it to the ground. This is the story of that bet and the impossible engine that came from it. So let's set the scene. It's 1931, and you'd think things were going great for Henry Ford. He's just celebrated building his 20 millionth car, a really stylish Model A. He even sent it on this big triumphant tour across America. But, behind all the fanfare, Ford was worried. The world was changing fast, and the king of the auto industry could feel his grip on the throne starting to slip. You see, Ford's kingdom was under attack, really on two fronts. First, there was the catastrophic economic depression, and second, maybe even more dangerous, a powerful new rival was beating him at his own game. For years, Ford's Model A with that trusty four-cylinder engine was the undisputed champion. But then, his old rival, Chevrolet, rolls out a car with a brand new six-cylinder engine, and guess what? It was faster, it was smoother, and the public absolutely fell in love with it. By the summer of '31, Chevy was outselling Ford, and Ford knew he had to do something. So what does Henry Ford do? Does he try to match Chevy with his own six-cylinder engine? No way. He decides to just leapfrog the competition entirely. On July 29th, he makes this world-changing decision and tells absolutely no one. Instead, he just suddenly shuts down 25 plants, lays off 75,000 workers, and bets the entire future of the Ford Motor Company on a top-secret plan. And this secret plan, well, it wasn't just ambitious. It was built around creating an engine that pretty much the entire industry thought was, well, impossible. Okay, so here's the heart of the problem. V8 engines already existed, sure, but they were only for crazy expensive luxury cars. They were built from multiple complicated pieces that were assembled by hand, one by one. To put a V8 in a car for the average person, Ford had to pull off an engineering miracle, casting the entire complex engine block in one single pour of molten iron. The answer from literally everyone in the engineering world was a firm, universal no. Even Ford's own chief engineer was convinced it was impossible. Mass-producing a single-piece V8 for a cheap car? It was pure fantasy. So why was this such a nightmare? Just imagine trying to pour molten iron into this incredibly complex mold, a mold filled with these winding internal passages for cooling water and oil. As that iron cooled, it would shrink and warp at different rates, and that caused catastrophic cracks. For every one good casting, you'd get 100 failures. There was simply no playbook for how to do this on a massive industrial scale. But Henry Ford, being Henry Ford, he moved forward anyway. He put together this small, secret team, tucked them away in a historic old lab, and basically told them to turn his fantasy into reality against all odds. And this was the secret team. They were holed up in Thomas Edison's old invention laboratory, of all places, and given their impossible task. And in a classic Henry Ford move, he actually made their job even harder. He forbade them from talking to other engineers and forced them to use Edison's old-fashioned belt-driven tools. It was an incredible test of just pure ingenuity. And while this secret team struggled, the clock was ticking, loud. By December, Ford stops all Model A production. He's all in. But then, January 32 rolls around. They've spent millions, and they still haven't solved the casting problem. His dealers are going bankrupt with nothing to sell. The whole company is just teetering on the edge of collapse. And then, just when it seems like all was lost, after months and months of failure, with the company's entire fate just hanging by a thread, they got a breakthrough. The breakthrough came from this man right here, Charles Sorensen, Ford's legendary production boss. He was so fed up with all the failures, he went down to the foundry floor himself, rolled up his sleeves, and personally directed the pour that finally worked. The workers were so impressed, they gave him a nickname that stuck with him for life, Cast Iron Charlie. So, with the impossible engine now suddenly a reality, it was time for Henry Ford to show the world what he'd been secretly building all this time. It was time to unleash the V8. On March 9, 1932, Henry Ford himself proudly walked up and stamped the serial number 18-1 onto the very first production V8 engine. Just 3 weeks later, on March 31st, the new car was officially revealed to a very curious American public. And the reaction? I mean, it was unbelievable. Remember, this is the absolute lowest point of the Great Depression. People have nothing. Yet in the first 48 hours, 6 million Americans flocked to showrooms just to get a look at this revolutionary car. It was more than just a car. It was like a symbol of hope. But, along with all the excitement, there was a lot of skepticism. People were wondering, okay, is this thing going to drink twice the gas? Are the pistons going to wear out funny because of that V angle? And they weren't totally wrong. The very first engines had some real problems, like using too much oil, and some of the blocks were actually porous because the casting process was still so new. So, how do you prove your brand new engine is truly reliable? Well, if you're Henry Ford, you decide to silence all the doubters by sending your new V8 into one of the harshest places on Earth for an incredible trial by fire, the Mojave Desert. I mean, the brutality of this test is just staggering. For 33 days straight, a single stock V8 engine ran around the clock, covering 1,000 miles every single day for a total of over 30,000 miles. Not only did it prove the engine's incredible toughness to the world, but it also acted as a rolling laboratory. They actually figured out a crucial redesign for the oil pan right there in the desert that solved the engine's early oil problems for good. With its reliability now proven in the most punishing way you could imagine, the Ford V8 was ready to do more than just save the company. It was ready to become a true American legend. And the proof is right here in the numbers. By July of 1932, just a few months after it came out, the new V8 was already outselling the traditional four-cylinder Ford 3-1. The public had spoken loud and clear. Henry Ford's massive bet hadn't just paid off, it had completely redefined his company for a new era. The Ford V8 quickly became this dependable, yet surprisingly powerful, car for the people. It was the family car that could finally climb steep hills with no problem, the salesman's car that could just eat up highway miles, and the police cruiser that could catch pretty much anything on the road. It put V8 power in the hands of everyday people. But its story didn't stop there. Not by a long shot. After World War II, a whole new generation of young Americans discovered this lightweight, powerful, and super easy-to-modify engine. The Flathead V8 became the heart and soul of the hot rod movement, a canvas for rebellion and creativity that really defined a whole new era of American car culture that's still going strong today. When you think about it, the Ford V8 was never just a piece of metal. It was born from a huge gamble during a national crisis, it overcame impossible odds, and it went on to shape American culture for decades. Which really leaves you with one final thought. What does it actually take to turn a simple engine into an enduring legend?